Yeah, we'll call the meeting, this is a public hearing for the town plan, calling to order at 5:32. And this is an open public hearing to discuss the town plan draft and take any public comment. The town plan, from my understanding, is legally expires every 5 years. And so this, I think last time it was done was 2008, is that right? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Something like that,
Roughly,
so.
yeah, so it's past, it's a little past.
It's a little
Yeah.
past due,
Great.
so. Perfect timing. So we've just entered into discussion, public discussion about the town plan. And the floor is open. Is anyone here who's here for that purpose?
Well, I'm in here for that purpose, and I just think it was a very interesting reading. I actually read the whole thing and showed an incredible amount of work by various people, mainly Mr. Bannister. And I just basically had one little thing I wanted to do, which is sort of minor. It's first of all, I'm very much in support of the state's initiative to have towns think about regulating river protection corridors and flood hazard areas and floodways and so on, and that discussion is covered in the town plan. And on page 55 on my copy, there's a little section C where it lists all the different things that the town can move to getting more reimbursement money after a federal disaster if we do some of these things. One of the things that was indicated was all permanent streams have a 50-foot setback from the top of bank. And I just was reading through some of the Conservation Commission stuff that I have that's been given to me by past members and so on, and found a lot of interesting data on the importance of the small streams. Because we always think of Sockett's Brook, you know, sort of where it runs through town, and East Putney Brook where it runs through the hamlet, that used to be the hamlet. But in fact, the little tributaries comprise like an immense amount of the waterway.
Source.
Because they're small streams, human activity tends to occur much closer to them. So there's more chance of pollution occurring, and then that pollution on the small streams, because there's such a large proportion of the whole watershed, really impacts the quality of the water throughout. And the suggested setback allows a buffer if someone wanted to have a buffer or maintain a buffer, and those have a lot of different qualities. So I just, being my usual self, typed this up. And attach some indication as to what kind of things buffers can do for you. Yeah, that's a good idea. Did you get one?
Yeah. We just get you one.
There you go. And I just thought it was interesting, and if there are any people who owned, which I do, land along a little stream, it was interesting to know what you get with different size buffers and how they all work. And the other thing I think people should bear in mind, if you live somewhat in the uplands, which many of us do, are not right in town, but you're up a little too. If you have like a small wetland or a stream, that wetland or stream is probably contributing some water to the bedrock aquifer. And most people outside the village limits and the limits of the water system, which is very important, are getting their water from drilled wells. And so the bedrock aquifer is what they're drawing on. And these little streams actually contribute to that. And the little wetlands do, and even the vernal pools, but in a very slow manner. So it's just interesting to know that it's not just about taking care of the surface water, but also the quantity of water in the aquifer. So I just wanted to say that.
Is this all stuff, Pip, that you Jan's talked to?
Oh,
Or is it here?
Actually-
I have an extra one. If you-
actually, we sort of discussed it, but
I just didn't know, as related to the
It's just-
town
I
plan,
just-
if there was something that needed to be done.
the plan is so long now, it doesn't need any more stuff.
Okay.
Not that it's so long, it's so complete, so thorough.
No, I think the town plan is fine as is. I just thought it was interesting. When we get around to discussing that topic in more detail about the river corridors, it might be useful to have.
I actually don't know, I mean, from a zoning standpoint, is there, for residential, is there a required?
Setback from street?
Yeah.
From,
Yes.
and how, what determines a stream size, et cetera? I mean, is that something you guys
Yeah.
obviously do look at?
Well, there's a couple of questions sort of pending there. One is about existing zoning, but maybe we'll just table that for the moment and get back to it if you want to talk about it. Ann was at a meeting yesterday with John Booker Campbell, who's a river specialist at DEC, is that right? Yeah. And we met to discuss, the planning commission met with John, and Ann was in attendance to discuss adopting a new flood hazard regulation that would include the river corridor designation. Are you guys up on that? Do you need any background on? You're nodding and you're squinting like.
Yeah, no,
So,
just briefly.
In this department was mandated by the state to map river corridors, something that had originally been called for fluvial erosion hazards. This is the type of flooding damage that we saw from Irene. It's typical of our drainage systems because of our topography, unlike the flat Midwest where water rises for a couple days and then goes down. You know, what we see in high rain events are the eroded stream banks. The mapping has been produced. I think it was issued tentatively in December and finally in March of this year. And it defines a boundary. It's speculative and sort of computer generated, and there may be some on the ground resolution of it that's required. But it also includes in that river corridor definition the streams that fit a certain requirement. I mean, they have a drainage area that are considered significant enough to be mapped, and they appear on the map. So you've seen those, Ann, right? Yeah. So the typical regulations that we would be interested in trying to achieve the maximum percentage. Yesterday, John had a slide up there that is now gone.
Is that why that map was
It
down?
was why the map was down. So I was looking over there to try to remember the slide so that I could bring to memory some of this stuff. The abbreviation for the percentage of payback of federal money from the state of Vermont in the event of an emergency. Are you guys sort of aware that right now with the adoption of the mitigation plan, we're at 11%? This is 11% of the difference between, of this, the feds will pay 70%. The states are in control of funds to provide some of the gap money. This is payment to the municipality for costs incurred in an emergency. So of that 30%, the state has some requirements that the community needs to meet in order to demonstrate that it's doing a thoughtful job in anticipating emergencies. And as the bar is raised, the amount that the state will provide to the community to fill this 30% gap is 5%, 11%, 17.5, or 18%? 17.5. Okay, so we're looking for the 17.5 conformance. To achieve that, we'll need to have regulations that address the river corridor in the river corridor as defined to be in conformance with that 17.5% goal includes the streams and the typical 50-foot setback from the top of banks of streams. So, Ann, I think that the regulations that we're headed for are going to get us to that 50-foot setback from streams. It's open to, on the on-site interpretation as to what the top of the bank of a stream is, where you're measuring the setback from. So in fact, it could be more than 50 feet from the center line of the waterway. So I think that's where we're headed as a community.
And isn't the current zoning 75 feet from the center of the,
Yeah, with
big
some
streams?
discretion, with some discretion for, which was demonstrated by Mr. Consello, is that, in his
Morgan.
Putney's little meditation checks approval, that was what allowed the DRB to approve that.
so anyway, yeah, this is something that grows out of the town plan, basically.
And that 17.5%, that just to clarify, is 17.5% of the 100% of the cost, or is that 17.5% of the 30%? It's 17.5 of the 30%.
Yeah,
Okay.
so where are we going on 70 plus 17 and a half, 87.5% reimbursement from the state.
Oh, so it is,
Right.
yeah, so it's
You're-
17.5 out of the 100,
Is our,
Yes.
right?
Yes, yes, all 100, yes. Yep. So you're gonna get 70, now we're talking about
So that's
what
very
percentage-
significant.
What percentage of the 30% remaining, the community wants,
Right.
And it seems that, because that's a requirement, we should really be trying to achieve that.
Meet it, yeah.
There may be some pushback, from a few individuals. And we'll just have to see how that's going.
And presumably, as you alluded to, there's pretty significant grandfathering involved in this. I mean,
Yeah, it's typically,
There must be. because we have a lot
nobody
of
undoes
places
anything,
that-
yeah.
on the road as it were.
I think, but how many were there, 24? No, it was more than that, 41 buildings?
That
41
would not be
emergency
considered
911
compliance. Yeah.
addresses, I think it was up in the 40s.
Yeah.
In terms of, so,
But that's
But
not
they're all
necessarily
grandfathered.
that's not stream stuff.
They're all grandfathered, right.
and I don't know if we're done with this one.
41 structures are in the river corridor, 18 are in the special flood hazard area.
And when you say the river corridor, that includes streams?
Yeah, but I would think.
That's not just the Connecticut, that's,
Well, the river corridor is, they are defined boundaries on the three major drainages, if I can visualize my map right, for Putney. And then,
East Putney Brook and.
Would Chase Brook be in?
it's a portion, it's a feeder of,
Sackets further up. that goes
that's further west, is my memory of the map. There are a couple of branches of Sackett's,
Right.
and they're included.
The one that comes from west-west and the one that comes from Windmill.
Yep.
Yeah,
But they're all part of the Sockets Brook and East Putney
Yep.
Brook watershed.
by the time you get there, yeah.
This is sort of independent, we're digressing a bit, but that the setup for river corridor regulations is in the town plan, because we were working on it as all this information was becoming available and coordinated with WRC, so it's very clear directives in the town plan. Go figure out your flood hazard issues and solve them.
Yeah.
right, so the important thing is that this doesn't change our regulations right off. There's a whole
No.
other process to go through for the flood
Yeah.
hazard, so people understand.
And I guess a heads up about the conversation we had last night, there are options to include some conditional use or conditional review, sort of, the variance concept for certain renovation activities, certain development activities in these areas. And that can be done and still be in conformance with the 17.5% goal, but it's more of a community discussion about what we really think is appropriate in these areas. And Anne has opinions. I am independent at the moment. I haven't figured out where I'm stand on all of this. But John encouraged us. I mean, John has a good presentation that's very helpful. I think we're going to have some public hearings, especially highlighting those 41 people in the river corridor and the 18 in the special flood hazard area to sort of give them their introduction to this issue, and then as a community begin to discuss what the implications are if we allow no construction in any of these areas. Yeah.
Which layer is it on this map? Does it say, is it just river
Yeah.
corridors?
Are you on the ANR
atlas?
atlas?
Yeah.
The river corridor, yeah, is the river management. It's a yellow. You
Yeah.
got to click a box. Did you?
I did this one right here.
Yeah. So these, well, they're not appearing yellow. Those heavy lines are the designated river corridors. If you zoom in just a little bit, maybe you can get a sense of it. Yeah. Yep. And on top of those will also be, if you click the special flood hazard area, there are areas where both of those are occurring in the same location, or they have slightly varying boundaries. Yeah, okay, so now you've flipped on, you see these sort of differences in the tones? You guys can't see this.
And those are actually, that toned area is the buffer zone? Or
Yeah,
that, yeah, okay.
yeah.
So even though the river corridor protection area is just, mapped now, it's not a regulation or anything, we have to, like,
Right.
Cynthia said, we have to go through a whole process on that, but the FEMA maps are already taken, the special flood hazard areas, which are mapped by the FEMA for years and years and years, those are already included in our regulations and
Yeah.
regulated to a certain degree now.
And
We
presumably,
should have a conversation about this,
Yeah.
but I think it's a separate conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's,
It's a big deal. I think we're going to map, we're going to request to have detailed mapping done of Putney because the river corridor includes many of the commercial buildings
Right.
on Kimball Hill.
Right.
And that can, we need to acknowledge that. Yeah,
Yeah.
we need to figure out whether they really are in or out because the mapping wasn't done on site. And if they're in, to what extent are we concerned about future development, vis-a-vis the flood, then future development vis-a-vis economic health of Putney. So that's an issue, we're going to be talking about.
and I had one, is that,
Just so people know that are watching that this is an atlas that the state of Vermont has on their natural resources, Vermont Agency of Natural Resources website that anybody can access.
and it's called the Natural Resources Atlas
Yes.
on that site.
And you can just, it's a little tricky to navigate, but it's, once you understand what the different levels are, you can go out there and.
And this is separate from, I believe, legislation involving runoff from farming, isn't it? This is a totally independent, totally separate issue, because that
Yeah.
presumably is coming our way in a more significant manner as well, so, yeah.
my only other comment was on the affordable housing section, which reading the numbers just look to be in crisis mode, considering how many residents of Putney pay in excess. This is, rent and utilities, PITI, and I would put utilities in. And they pay in excess of 30%, like up around 50% or more. And I just, recently, people, all of us know, are looking for housing and everybody's moving somewhere else. They look really hard in Putney and then they move somewhere else, to actually live. And I think the plan is excellent in detailing and in outlining the problem and having the tables and all. But I was just wondering if we should be any stronger about putting in a goal of not just working with people, but having a goal over the next 5 years of actually creating X number of new affordable units one way or another. I mean, it could be an extra apartment or an extra, apartment allowed in a house in the village. It could be infill housing. It could be whatever. But I wonder if we need to be stronger
We are
in that
actually,
section.
the Affordable Housing Committee, which has been pretty inactive for a handful of years now, we're actually meeting the 15th of this month for the first time in quite a while, and Pip's on that as well. But we are working with Wyndham Windsor currently to increase the number of units in town. Funding has gotten much trickier, but I will take your comments to heart as far as looking at possible innovative ways to come up with other things beyond what they're able to directly help us with. It's difficult statewide. I mean, as you know, our statewide numbers are rough, as well as locally. So I'm also on a state board that deals with this issue, so
I'm sure it's
pretty
not
well
easy.
versed. And we're, yeah, it's right now it's a lot of it is funding questions.
When you speak of funding, what do you mean, state or federal?
Both. And for the most part, for many of these projects, the state actually acts as a pass-through for federal money on much of it.
And
So
it is in very short supply.
it's in very short supply,
Well, that's what I've
exactly.
heard.
So,
That's what I've
and
heard.
it's very competitive getting it.
It's
So
very important.
it's very important, especially when you look at, I mean, this is something, we had this discussion also related to sevens, I mean, for economic growth,
Yeah.
affordable housing is vital, and we don't have it here. So
Yeah,
we,
even mere existence,
yes,
survival.
yes.
Very, very disturbing.
Do you have, you sort of missed that, but Ann was commenting the necessity for increasing availability of affordable housing in Putney, and you addressed that thoroughly in the town plan. I think Ann's question is, should we be sort of setting a goal to achieve, or do we just keep working on it, kind of thing?
Well, I sort of say that because of the last experience with the, 31 units or 35 units that kept getting changed and did not go ahead, where Wyndham Regional just walked away thinking Putney was not going to cooperate. But it sounds like you have a very good working relationship at this point.
With Wyndham Windsor,
Mhm.
yeah. We're meeting with them on the 15th, and we will know more about what their current thinking is as of that.
I mean, maybe one of the take-homes from the work that the Affordability Committee we did, was that you can't do this by yourself. You
Right.
can't do this as a municipality.
Right.
You have to be in concert with your local affordable housing agency. Ours is Wyndham Windsor. I think that whatever has happened in the past, we're past it with the Depot Road project, and I mean, there may be other partners to work with, but as a community, that's what we need to do, is be working with our housing,
Yeah.
affordable housing partners.
When you meet with them, the other issue that I had with that was with the Depot Road project, which I think is lovely. Was there a cash up front? Did they require like security first, last kind of requirement? Could you ask them that?
You
I've
mean,
heard that they
you
did.
mean for
the
rent?
residents.
For the rent. In other words, did you have to not only be, did you have to come up with a lump of cash?
I think
to
that
put in
I
it?
think that they work with people if there are, their management of their spaces is very rigid in that it's very detailed, but flexible in that they work with people as hard as they can. And
Because if you're a single mother with a kid and just making ends meet, you may not have
they
the first, last, and the security.
My
deposits
impression is
cash
they
sitting
will,
around.
if you meet the sort of baseline eligibility requirements, they will work hard with you to make it something you can do. And I don't have an answer to that
Okay,
question.
you might bring that up.
I can ask that.
Okay.
But we are lucky. I mean, Wyndham Windsor is a very capable housing
No,
trust.
I love the contract.
And they do very well. So, but Pitt's point is very valid, and that it speaks directly to that question of funding. Is you just can't do this on your own. I mean, the numbers are staggering when you look at what it costs to do these projects.
Yeah,
And-
the construction costs are out
amazing.
through the ceiling.
Yeah, they really are. So it's not something one can just take on. However, that having been said, and your point about alternative ways to, I mean, I know in the past there has been money available for people to fix up apartments in their houses, et cetera, and I don't know the status of that now, but we can inquire about that.
Okay.
at that
I think
meeting.
one of the things that we need to address, which I know Pip and I have talked about a lot, is we can add more apartments or affordable housing in the village, but there's not a lot of parking.
Yeah.
And we run
it's a big
into,
problem.
we're having problems over here right now with some parking issues. So, it's just, that needs to be addressed. at some point too, whether that means we need to talk about a space to maybe make
A municipal
a
parking
municipal
lot.
parking lot or something, you know. Which at this point, that brings up a point of Wyndham Regional right now, I've been working with them, doing an inventory of our parking, and probably in January, we'll have a map of the entire village that shows what is private parking, what's municipal. That way we have a visual of what we're really looking at.
This would just be a small item, but maybe useful. Habitat for Humanity at the high school.
Yes,
That would be a unit of perhaps, maybe a couple of units. But
Yeah.
just wondered if that could be explored.
yeah.
Because they do outstanding work, of course.
They do. No, I actually brought that up a couple months ago when we were having a meeting. That piece of land that we inherited
Oh, yes, I
last
heard
year,
about
the possibility of putting a unit or two on it. And I haven't had that conversation with many people, but it's something that's in the back of my mind that it would be helpful. Parcels of land for that to happen on are necessary. You know,
That
people
too,
need, that
of
needs to be
course.
provided, so.
I was just gonna say Warden Road is sort of a, you know, it doesn't have anything to do with affordable housing necessarily, but the way that road got built was very strange, but the town brought it, because the developer didn't have the road up to town standards, the town brought it up to town standards, and then everyone who lived along the road paid off the bond.
Right.
So it wasn't spread over the whole taxpayers.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether there's ways of getting a site and then putting in a town road and then, I don't know, doing a Habitat for Humanity lot, a market lot or something, I don't know. I'm just brainstorming, which probably is better done in the meeting that you're going to have.
Yeah,
Well, I'm here utterly uninformed. I was aware the town had a plan, but I did not realize that it was redone every 5 years until Ann told me yesterday. So I thought I'd come and listen, and I am interested in the changes, more than subtle changes, which were being made with help from the government and state agencies. But are there other changes that you have in mind in the new plan?
yeah.
Pip.
This is a report about the plan. and
Oh, thank you.
Discusses, I think the short answer is, the plan, nothing that significant. You know, we already have flood regs in place.
Right.
We're suggesting improving them. We, from a regulatory point of view, there are no major changes to land use zoning with the exception of what's noted here, which is a small area alongside the Connecticut River. But there's I think, a more thorough discussion of the issues to sort of prep the future conversations. So I think that we're in a good place to begin to discuss a number of issues. The town plan for me has focused the issues, helped me understand the issues in a little more focus. So there's nothing profound about it from a regulatory point of view.
It is very complex, however, I understand that.
Well, if you want to really read it thoroughly before next Wednesday, we're having another town plan.
Wonderful, wonderful. I understand it's 150 pages, or maybe I
Only
exaggerate.
100.
Oh, 100, I beg your pardon.
And there's a lot of drawings and maps and all sorts of things.
Pictures.
Covered chapter by chapter basis.
I see.
Good week's
Oh,
read. It's a
they're
good week's
chapters.
read. Right.
You should be able to get a copy of
But
the
it's,
town plan also.
It's actually very
It's
important.
online, and I don't think you're that,
Okay.
you don't use that resource, but it is also available online at the town
All right.
website.
There's a number of drafts floating around too, I know.
I see.
Here and here at the library and.
All right. Well, I'm not
The
sure.
library has one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm not sure I'll become deeply involved, but I'm very much interested in this business of affordable housing. It's absolutely crucial.
You know, it might be worth, if you haven't looked through it thoroughly but want to pick a couple areas that are of particular interest and read about what those are.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else regarding the town plan?
There isn't anything more technical we need to do at this point, right, Pip?
No, just you're going to have a second public hearing, and after that, then if there are no major changes, you can decide whether or not you want to adopt it.
Yeah.
And then there are a few administrative things that we'll do after that.
So the town plan is adopted by the select board.
Yes. After
Is what, sorry?
You are the body that adopts the town plan, correct? And there's no public hearing other than this one and then the one next Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then we will hopefully have it adopted at the following meeting, because that falls into line with us getting our village center designation renewed.
Your village one?
Village center designation.
Oh, all right.
So we can't ask for that to happen until the town plan has been adopted.
And these are also, I have to say, when it comes to that issue of affordable housing and money that's available to it, these are very useful instruments in the process of trying to get that money. Because if you come to, the various different boards that fund these things, that act as the pass-through boards, it's difficult if you do not have a good town plan and or village designation, et cetera, in place to ask for money. They're much more likely to give towns that are well organized about that funding.
Makes sense.
Yes.
Now, doesn't the town plan suggest extending the village designation border or considering it?
It does.
Yeah.
It does, but the time
Time
frame
frame
for
is not-
renewal wasn't enough. We're going to get into it after we
Yeah.
re-up.
Okay.
But I'll just tell you a little bit about that. Is there's a certain time frame we have to have this renewal done, but the person that at the state level wants to come down and walk the village with me and talk about what makes sense, and he said that can be done at any time. It doesn't have to be done at a renewal time. So because of the short time frame that we have, I decided that we should go ahead and get our renewal done so that we don't lose that designation. We have like a 90-day grace period where we could get it done, but I don't want that to happen. Have him come down, have him come to a select board meeting, kind of update everybody on what that means and what it means for the people in the village, and then talk about possibly extending it to what makes sense.
Okay,
So that could be done in probably March or April.
All right. If there's nothing further, then just as a reminder, the next town plan meeting will be next Wednesday, December 9th at 5:30. Hopefully to adopt it on the 16th.
Yep.
Right. Thanks very much.
Thank you particularly, Pip, for all your work.
To you and
Amazing amount of work.
What's your agenda discussion of salvage yards?
Whatever we want it to be. That was you and I talking, remember, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I meant, is it on the agenda for this evening?
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry, I
And
thought you had it.
what is the order?
It'll be after they accept the minutes, which will be in the next couple minutes. So right soon.
Could I lobby to have a quick discussion with you about that first before your minutes?
Which, I make a motion that we accept the minutes.
Surprisingly quick.
November
We're
18th.
gonna take a quick advertisement break.
We're done.
It's been moved.
I'm
Oh, you
abstaining. Yes, I was
okay.
not
All
at the
right.
committee.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll second that.
Running about 103.
I made 2 minor grammatical errors to Laura. So if there's nothing else,
No, just these were thorough and good
Yep.
minutes as usual.
yep, they're very good.
And like 14, when I went to print it, it was 14 pages. I
a lot
said,
of
what in the
material.
heck did you type?
Yeah, no,
Lots of
very good.
papers.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, let's just-
All right,
Okay.
I guess we didn't make adjustments to the agenda.
No.
Sorry to make you wait.
Okay. All right, on to new business.
I don't
Dinner
know if it's
discussion.
pushy, but I'll see what I can get to my dinner date. You have an opportunity to get engaged in a process of approving the location of salvage yards. This is under enabling legislation, Title 24, Chapter 61, Subchapter 10. the process, there are rules that have been generated in response to this enabling legislation that have created A&R regulations for licensing salvage yards. Now, this is your cheat sheet. You might need to take this home, or we can do this when we have more time. It's this fussy stuff. It's kind of regulatory stuff. There's a set of model regs from VLCT. I can leave all this stuff here. If anybody has an interest, they can make a copy, but I didn't copy it all for you. You know, we've got 40
What's the
pages.
date on that one you have, Jeff?
The VLCT
Yeah.
one? 2015.
Okay, so I must have printed an old one,
Okay.
so I'll take mine out.
I've got a folder here. This is crap. Oh, here it is.
Do you want to keep your copy and I'll print, or did you make more?
Yeah, these are the rules that the A&R is operating under. This is a draft model of the VLCT reg that addresses this. These are the rules that the A&R is operating under, and this is a copy of the enabling legislation. So I'll just leave this folder with Cynthia, and if you have any interest in chasing it down, we can talk about it. I think the recommendation would be to grab the VLCT model reg and start to see if it would meet the purposes of our community.
And in a nutshell, do you want to mention what you think?
Yeah, let me just try to
What was your
synopsize.
goal?
The salvage yard rule covers the storage of junk and of 4 or more motor vehicles. It also is an actual salvage yard in the concept of crushing automobiles and sending them out. That wouldn't typically be a use that we would likely encounter here, but we do encounter the 4 or more junked cars, and just to let you know that they're now under A&R rules. Part of the A&R process engages the municipality in that the select board would approve the location of a salvage yard, so that if someone wanted to sort of get right with the state, in this operation of 4 or more junk cars, storage of 4 or more junk cars or an actual motor vehicle, salvage yard, they would visit the select board as one of their steps. And you would go through a process mandated in the enabling legislation to evaluate the location. And you would go through a process not unlike a DRB hearing, and you would thumbs up or thumbs down on the location. The permittee then, or the applicant then would visit A&R and annually purchase an operation license for the salvage yard. The conditions would typically mean control of fluids, all the liquids in the vehicle, and screening from view, and the extent of the screening is kind of discretionary that would occur during the location approval process. There'd be a condition that would describe the screening. If that were to happen, then you presumably locations that didn't meet that, didn't get your approval, would be in violation, and there'd be some type of regulatory process of wrist slapping or something. So just be advised that this sometimes works, it sometimes doesn't, and that as a community, we are sort of relieved of the responsibility to evaluate whether 4 or more cars is an issue. The state has made that decision for us. There is an opportunity to decide whether 1 to 3 cars is an issue. The VLCT model reg has an opportunity to include less than 4 cars in the control. The state enabling legislation allows the municipality to do that. So it's, within the bounds of your rights as a municipality. I think we ought to have a conversation about it in town.
What about just junk?
Yeah, junk is also included in the salvage yard description. Your little crib notes there have that information. I don't expect you to digest all this right away. But the determination about junk is not as clear as 4 or more cars. But yeah, large piles of junk could probably fit the definition of a salvage yard, in which case the trigger has been pulled, and now there are a set of A&R rules that are extensive in regard to dealing with that. If they are not hazardous materials, the primary issue would be screening.
Is it safe to assume that A&R, although they've established these guidelines for this, are not likely to contribute in the enforcement department? I mean, that's been a stumbling block in the past to putting any sort of, oomph behind any of this kind of thing. Do you know, is that addressed in the
Violations of the model reg allows the select board to choose 2 regulatory paths, either civil or Vermont Supreme Court. I think those are two options you have for infractions. As to whether or not A&R will choose to get involved in lawsuits or in sort of an enforcement action, I don't know.
What constitutes junk?
Well, it suggests that you look Title 24.
Oh, it's stated.
Title 24, Chapter 61, Subchapter 10. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you just Google it,
Interesting,
but you may
okay.
not, but go to the library and
Okay,
they'll Google
right.
it for you.
I'm sure one of those things where you could ask one man and they'd have an opinion.
Well, that's what I wondered, if there was a standard.
It's sort of a matter of organization.
And among the location
Presentation.
standards would be that a salvage yard would not be placed in a river corridor, among a number of other issues.
fair enough.
So I think we have a salvage yard. If you now look at the Yellow River corridor boundaries, you would see that the salvage yard,
Exists.
that we have one in town that's within a river corridor.
Yeah.
So there's also coordination with zoning. There's a little bit, if you flip to the back page there, the VLCT reg would suggest that the select board acknowledge that they're dealing with a use that should probably be in conformance with local zoning. We describe the storage of 6 or more cars as motor vehicle sales in our zoning, and it's allowed only in 2 districts, in the village district and in the multi-use district. So nowhere else in town under our zoning would 6 or more cars be an accepted use. So if we want to go this path, perhaps there should be some coordination with some acknowledgement of salvage yard, approved salvage yard locations, and we could begin to see whether they should be allowed in some other districts. And we also should maybe have a community discussion about what do we want to do with 1, 2, or 3 junk cars on someone's property. Do we care as a community?
So what Pip and I talked about was just starting to bring, well, we've had people come to us within the past year at least talking to us about this problem. So when we thought we should probably have once we get a little bit more information, a community discussion just for that,
Yeah,
not have it at a
that's a good
select
idea.
board meeting, just
Yeah.
a separate meeting.
But the 4 more is interesting, their state, folks are in violation of state regs. And, the enforcement, of course, is pretty lax because there aren't A&R cops.
Exactly.
But as a community, if we feel that it's an issue, it's one that we could begin to move on, and then the adoption of this VLCT model reg, which would very explicitly outline the whole procedure.
Give us some background.
Would give you I think you probably could do something right now because under the state enabling legislation, you are empowered to do that. But this would clarify it in, great detail. So my suggestion is take a look at some of this stuff and we can have a conversation later.
good.
Okay, good.
It'll be on this old business.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank
See
you.
ya.
It'll
I'll
move
see you
down.
next time for the plan.
Sounds good.
All right, I can see a lot of
Huh?
complaining about, on this junk.
Well, when
definition.
the leaves come off the trees,
Complicated.
Yeah.
it really starts
Oh, yeah.
to
Yep.
have it.
But I think that, you know, having
Yeah.
something in place so that the most egregious situations can be addressed, you know, reasonably and with an
Right, I
informed.
think you start with, right, exactly. You don't have as much resistance to implementation of these kind of regulations
Yeah.
as well, you know, or in effect scofflawing it, because you know, if you start going after 1 to 4 vehicles in somebody's yard, that's really going to be difficult
Asking for
to,
trouble,
to,
yeah.
to.
It's about all of us.
And also, you know, an understanding that it's an economic burden on folks to
Absolutely.
clean these
Yeah.
things up.
Yeah.
You know, often in cases that they've just sort of inherited that issue.
Yeah.
And so we need to be a little sensitive about those issues as well.
Yeah.
But, which goes to the point of going after the more egregious ones.
Yeah.
In particular, you know, issues of fluids and
Oh, yeah.
whatnot.
And in-
You know,
and in the-
that it's
the
unsightly,
watershed
yes,
protection
that is a
areas, yeah.
concern, but
I
the
would think
pollution
those would be the ones
concerns,
that A&R
I
would
think
be willing to
are
go
much
after.
more,
I would
you can
agree.
get people behind that
Right.
more than you can get it saying, well, they're making me plant trees in front of my junk cars or something like that. That just well, it does,
Yeah,
it
the
creates
inside,
a,
I think,
you
grow
know, an
up.
atmosphere of.
They just take over the power. Kids at the after-school program would be appalled if the junk cars were vanished suddenly.
That's right.
We like to call them lawn ornaments at my house.
You know, right, do you give,
They don't
do you
stick
give,
around
do you give a
long, but-
working, you give a working farm, you know, exemptions on it?
Right,
You know,
exactly.
There's a lot of broken machinery, tractors and whatnot, you know, is that junk or is that something that's in waiting repair to be reapplied and things, you know, I mean, in this state, we tend to kind of give agricultural.
My guess, I don't know, I haven't read the statute, I would assume that maybe there's some agricultural exemption
think so,
Exactly,
in there, yeah.
right, right.
I don't know, I haven't read it, but,
But again, with this, you know, watershed area stuff, they may be tightening up on that
Yeah.
pretty significantly.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes
Right, in
total
fact,
sense.
right,
Yeah.
and again, you know, the state, if they're going to pass these regulations, needs to give us a little bit of money to put some teeth in it as
Yeah.
well. I mean, make it realistic, you know,
Good luck.
otherwise the change starts taking place in Montpelier.
All right, we'll move on to the village center designation.
so, like I was saying
Can you sign
before, that we need to renew our designation by February of 2016, so this is one of the steps of that process is that the board has to resolve that they are in support of, the renewal of that village center designation, so,
So moved.
And that's the current
yeah.
village designation. I'll second that.
Second, okay, moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just sign it. Or you can just keep that down there.
All right,
You go.
and then, what's his name, Robert?
Stronger.
Discussion about drones.
Now, right, was this discussed the last meeting?
Yeah, he
Hey,
brought
man.
in, brought in the letter.
Okay.
Actually, you
We've got
probably didn't
drones.
get a copy of
Oh,
it,
no.
because you weren't, I'll make you a copy, but,
Oh, I saw it in the minutes. So,
I put it on there, so we got that letter from Robert last week, or the, kind of his concerns about drones in the community, and if there was anything that the town could do as far as an ordinance, or, and at this point right now, I've reached out to VLCT. I thought I was gonna hear something by today, she was gonna put, Abby hadn't heard anything, you know, hadn't really been on her radar, but she was gonna put some feelers out and start, you know, send it out to listserv, and I haven't heard anything from her, so I tried to reach out to her today and didn't get anything back yet. So I'm assuming this is all fairly new for people, and so I'll just I'll keep it on the back burner, and once I get some information, I'll bring it back. I mean, I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on it.
Just for our viewing audience, this is essentially requests that there's consideration of the airspace above private property and what the implications of that are, what one's avenues are for defending against that, and I'm guessing it's going to be more of a state issue than it is a local issue, but it might be a combination of both. Is one allowed to take a shotgun to a drone that's hovering above their property? The answer, I think, is generally no, but if...
And why is that?
The most sort of reasonable explanation that I've heard is because that many of them are in fact government related, and if you take a shotgun to government property, then it's a felony. So it's probably a good idea not to shoot it until you've identified it.
Right, identification.
Exactly. But I think it's it's absolutely a real thing that we're going to have to be considering in the future.
Yeah. Does the federal agent have a right to walk on my property without letting me know? I mean, can somebody
don't know.
representing the federal
Well, that was
walk
part
on my
of
property without telling me he's going to be there or asking my permission?
that's part of his argument, saying, for example, that if we have rights of all the soil beneath our land, why don't we have rights to the air above our land also?
I wonder if in the town plan we ought to just put a little addendum that we should consider regulating this particular issue, which is not in there now because nobody thought of it
Because
at
it
the
hasn't been on the
time.
radar.
But I
It's not
think
a bad
it should
idea.
be on the radar, and it would just
Yeah.
take a line to put it in there.
Yeah, acknowledge it.
That's a good idea.
And I'm guessing it's going to be a statutory issue.
Right, it's here to stay, and
Yeah.
and it's going to be addressed, I would think, starting on the federal level, and they're talking about licensing.
They already have,
drone,
yeah.
UPS,
certain
etc.
size.
Yeah.
But that doesn't do anything about, that little private drone that you can
That's
buy
what I
at,
think.
in a catalog, and, take snapshots of your neighbor, right, looking, as said here, looking in your window, so.
I see no reason why things can't rise from the municipal level up to the state level to the federal, or at least, get sort of a certain level of mass, people interested and worried or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah, no, and I think probably, what might be the most appropriate venue would be for Robert or somebody to draft something that we would have as an article at
Yeah.
town meeting, stating our concern essentially, or whatever the appropriate terminology would be at that time to
Well, the
just make
next
it clear
legislative
that.
session is coming up too. We can draft our
That's
own
true,
bill.
that's true too, yeah,
Mhm.
or talk to Mike about it, or,
Yeah, I mean, they have, you bring them something.
yeah. I'd be surprised if it isn't already there.
Yeah, and that's why I think the league is going to be the best resource on just
Who's doing what.
who's doing what and
Yeah.
what's being talked about. So I'll keep my eye on their website, plus keep in touch with them to see if she's had any feedback. I didn't see anything come out on the listserv, so she may have forgotten to ask the question, but I will, I'll find out. So we'll just keep it on the list.
Sounds good.
Doesn't Germany not allow Google Earth to take pictures of people's houses? I heard something like that. I mean, it's just certainly, when you get into this technical area, I think we really do need to.
I think a lot of that's done by satellite.
Yeah, so
And that's flying.
there were some towns that wouldn't allow the
Yeah.
car to drive through. That takes street
Yeah,
street
that's what I'm
pictures and
thinking
everything.
of.
Yeah,
So
there's a
there
lot.
is some precedent, not here, but
Yeah.
good issue. Hadn't thought of it.
Yeah, no, it's
There's
different.
something you can research for me, Anne.
Oh, God. drones, I don't know. I think you need some.
Oh, I bet by
younger than
tomorrow
me
you
to
might
do that
bring
one.
something.
See so much going wrong.
Yeah.
You,
Go home and read up on it.
Yeah, right.
Then have a conversation with Cynthia.
Okay.
But maybe buy your own personal drone first. So you
Okay.
can-
Right, your
See how much I
your
like it.
anti-drone drone, that you have, right,
Yeah.
your drone
Oh my
defense
God.
net over your house.
No,
your home.
and, I mean, one of the difficult things is that in fact, these are gonna be incredibly useful tools
Yeah.
on multitudes of levels for
Including agriculture.
agriculture,
Junk
all
delivered
sorts
right
of
in your
things.
front yard.
Wildlife, I mean, for example, mapping watershed areas.
Yeah.
I mean, the resolution of pictures they can do is amazing,
or when they're.
Sure, I mean, they're already,
Emergencies and
already
disaster
using
relief
these
and all
in
sorts of things.
rescue applications and things of
Exactly.
that nature.
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
huge.
Obviously, there's, right.
Yeah.
With the good,
But
comes
those
the bad.
you think would
That's
be
right.
regulated and
That's right.
licensed on
In a
at
different
least
way.
a state level, if
Yeah.
not federal level,
Yeah.
like any kind
And
of.
we do have nuisance
FCC.
rules about noise, don't we?
Yes.
Well,
Oh, just what we need.
except yeah, some of these are becoming electric too. So
Are we going what?
electric.
Electric.
So,
So they're
make
very
less
quiet.
noise.
Extremely
I
quiet.
would, I
Extremely
didn't
quiet.
realize they made an awful lot of noise. I mean, when I thought of a drone, I thought of a quiet drone.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Surreptitious, as it were.
Well, they do know that those buzzy drones do increase their heart rates, and they stop.
Yes.
And they stop observing them. The biologists at, I don't know what
Yeah.
department was doing it, but they said, no, we gotta stop this.
Yeah. I've seen that data.
Yeah.
Well, it's been utterly
Okay.
fascinating. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
We'll come next week too.
It's always interesting.
Take care.
Watch out for low-flying drones.
All right, we move on to the fiscal year 17 draft budget.
Let's look at general fund budget first. So I think that I've plugged the number in every line item that we are going to be spending or receiving money. If you flip through the entire budget, you will see the highlighted, lines are the ones that I kind of have questions on or that we need to discuss. So,
Oh, it's
yeah,
gray highlighted.
gray highlighted, yeah, sorry.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I did put page numbers on it after I printed it too, so that we could, so we'll skip, through the revenue for now, because those two things don't need to be answered right now. But the first thing that we need to talk about is salaries for everybody. I usually start us at whatever the cost of living increase is gonna be for the year through Social Security. There is not one this year.
Mhm.
So that is gonna be entirely up to you guys.
But the state has come up with a number.
I didn't hear about it, so what did they come up with, do you know?
It was relatively high, I don't know. We just were having this discussion.
Through their budgeting process, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
We, typically in the past few years since I've been here, it's been 2%, it's been 3%.
I want to say it was
You're not.
somewhere between the two, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm not finding it quickly on here. Yeah,
Is it an issue we need to resolve today?
it would be helpful. Just because at this point right now, the way everything stands, the way I have it in the budget, we are at a 1 cent, based on the grand list from last year, we're about a 1 cent increase in the tax rate. But the salaries are gonna make a huge difference, not huge,
Do you
are
have
gonna make a difference.
sort of a breakdown of that, let's say, what would 2%
I can
as
do it.
opposed to 1%,
Yeah.
as opposed to something else? Just, that's a quick reference.
I don't understand, how can Social Security not do, I know it's not
Well,
uncommon.
it's
But
an
how-
election year and it's a political football.
unbelievable.
That's-
I mean,
Price of gas is falling.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I
that's-
heard. was
That's
the
probably
gas.
what it is, yeah.
But virtually everything else is either stayed
Kept-
still or
kept going
continues to
up.
go up.
Especially people on Social Security, I mean,
It's
Exactly.
medicine is more expensive.
Everything.
Over-the-counter products are more expensive.
So,
It's very irresponsible to grow old and depend upon the government like that anyway.
So if we limit the benefits of that, maybe more people will bail earlier.
Yeah, like any of us escaped that journey.
oh boy, that's not right, $2 million difference.
No, that's a big no on that one.
That won't work.
Isn't that what you said, 2 million?
Yeah. What if we threw 2 million at it? How's that come out?
That might be a problem. I just want to make sure that I have the spreadsheet working, that it does mine and Tom's, because we have ours a little set up a little different. Yeah, so it is about 2% across. Now, this is considering that my spreadsheet works exactly the way that it's supposed to.
Right.
About $4,000
We
in
will.
salary.
The
That's-
caveat is approximate.
Yeah, so that's about 4,000 in salary across the board, not for the listers, not for the pool, because they're not part of the cost of living stuff. Not for any of the boards or committees that we pay, so this is just
Clerks.
clerk,
Our
yeah.
full-time employees.
Yeah. And then just remember, when you're looking through here, there's a little bit of a difference with, like, Tom, he got the raise mid-year,
Right.
so his looks
Right.
like his has increased a lot. Not a lot, I should stop being in big words, but
Percentage looks-
the percentage is more than what the rest of us are. There was a change in the highway department a little bit, so.
So you have a percent here.
Yeah,
Why is that? Just,
that was the little bit that,
we decided?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, I mean, I think it, personally, I think it would be, you know, insulting isn't the right word, but I think it's not unreasonable for us to say that 2% is sort of a minimum that we should do. I don't know
I think
whether
that's a pretty realistic number.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm not
if you
sure.
want me to just get that as the starting point, and then when the rest of the budget falls in line, this obviously isn't the last time we're talking about this.
Sure.
At least that gives me I just didn't want to assume anything as far as salaries.
Yep,
Yeah, no, I mean, you know,
I think that's a good point to start. and-
I do too. No, and I think it would be interesting to find out what state organizations
do
are
that.
doing.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a little higher than that, but again, I could be totally wrong. But I think 2% is a
Okay.
reasonable place
Yeah,
to start.
yeah, I agree.
So,
The workers' comp is half.
well.
I guess that's.
We don't know.
That's,
Remember, we have two separate budgets
That's right,
now.
that's right,
Part of it's in
that's right.
highway, part of it's in town.
that's right,
So you have to
Yeah.
look at both.
the highway.
Yeah.
But we don't know exactly what that's
But
gonna
right
be.
now, I've level
Yeah.
funded it because I don't know what the
Right,
increase will be.
right.
We actually may go down in workers' comp because our experience mod, we've been 3 years out or
Oh.
something, has gone down.
So it might.
Is down good? Yeah. So the lower that number, the better we are doing.
Right,
So,
okay.
and it has gone down, so we may come back with a better number on that, I don't know. But, so, the other thing that we need, I did not include in here, that we talked about paying Tom until the end of June was comp time.
Right.
Mhm.
So I need to know if we are going to
Put that in.
continue with the comp time for him. So what we did was, he can earn up to 80 hours within the year, and whatever he doesn't use, he gets paid at the
Right.
end of that time.
Right.
Which is the same thing that we do, I think Brian has 80, because they're on salary and they can work. a number of hours overtime and not get paid, so this is our way of saying, you know,
Here's a little something.
Yeah.
yeah.
I certainly don't object to that. I mean, especially if it's a department head thing, then it's a department head
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah, I agree.
I just wanna know where's that from. Okay. So I don't know if this is where you wanna talk to the listers about their wages, because I need to plug that. What I put into this one that you have is that, just like everybody else's salaries, I put in the same thing that we had last year. And then go up from there, or whatever you wanna do. I don't know what page it's on. Standard, oh, it's on page 6. The proposed budget, I think, was 28,000.
Oh, I see.
And do we have a copy? I don't have a copy of that in front of me.
I do, somewhere.
No, I don't need it. I got it, actually, I got it on the computer here. Unless you've got a hard copy.
What are you looking for, like the email?
Yeah, the proposed
the
budget.
budget.
She might have.
Yeah.
Oh, you got it, okay.
Copies for you guys. This is what I emailed you, and this is the budget. So, let me give you this, I'm sorry. Give that. Set for you. Set for you.
Thank you.
This is for you. This is the two things that we found.
It's cold in here.
So how many hours per week were you previously, Kathleen?
It varied, that's why I
I mean,
came
it
up with 20.
was budgeted for.
We didn't do a budget of hours. We did.
22 was the,
22.
22 was the original number.
Okay,
And then, for the other listers,
It was 2 hours per week is how it had been previously broken down. I don't know where.
4 total between the two.
Exactly, the 2 hours
Okay,
per,
that's
so it was a total of 26 hours amongst all of the listers. And I don't know how that was arrived at. Do you know how that was arrived at?
Yeah, I think it was a couple years ago. I mean, I think we upped it a couple hours last year, but Ruby and I don't know how it was arrived at, but that's what they presented at the meeting, and there was a restructure. That's when I think it was decided that it wasn't going to be a cost of living process anymore. It was head lister was a certain rate, the other 2 listers were a different rate, and this was how they were going to restructure it. And then on an annual basis, the board would decide who that head lister would be. So it would be looked at every year to see who would be getting the bulk of the hours.
okay,
That's what I remember.
so that's,
Overall, this represents roughly a
6.
30% increase.
yeah, because you're adding 6 there, there's an extra 12 hours a week.
You want to field some of this? or-
Well, I'm just kind of curious, I mean, that's especially if reappraisals, it seems like such a huge increase.
well,
It is, I mean, a 30% increase.
okay. Maybe it is, but this is what we have found that the hours take to do. I mean, one of our increases for the salary line is also because when we had the 3 listers, one was not drawing from the salary line at all. Tim never did. And Ruby did. And a few years ago when we came up with like bulk hours and we were trying to structure it, we were trying to figure out how to do that. That was before the reappraisal, as I recall. And we were unsure. I mean, before the reappraisal, there were many things that were unknown as far as how our system was going to work after the reappraisal. We knew we had to do it, so we did do it. And then now the thing that we're finding, I mean, that's why if you look at the other sheet that I gave you, the other clipped on things, it shows other towns. But more importantly, what happened here in Putney is that we have found that drawing from the salary line is going to come the education pieces too. I mean, anytime that we go to a class,
True.
well, anytime we go to a class, we're drawing from the salary line too.
Yeah.
I mean, should it be that way or should it be separated out?
Well, they would get paid for their hours going, and then the cost of the training would come out of the training line. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm just wondering
Yeah.
whether that should be considered salary or whether that should be considered as part of the training budget. I don't know.
I would say salary. It's just easier for us not to have a separate pay type set up for the. Although we would be able to track that. That's.
Yeah, there is a way to track.
I mean, we could do it either way. That way, you know how many hours are being used for training.
I think that would be useful. And I think it also, in all honesty, I don't think that should be part of the salary line. I mean, that's a different, it's a different part, in my opinion. I guess I have to start this conversation by expressing my frustration at, how we got to where we are now. The fact that there has been a real lack of just working together in the office has been problematic for months, if not years. And that's frustrating for us because we end up spending time on it that we don't otherwise need to. It's very difficult for Cynthia doing her job when there is resistance to do things the way things are done. We asked Cynthia to be the financial manager for us, for the town. That has been complicated apparently with you. And I'm speaking specifically to you, Kathleen. I think
Okay, but how so?
I think that the question of time cards has been complicated because there are no clear hours that are set. There are no, and I know you're not required to have clear hours, so that's up to you. And I think I have to tread a careful line here because you're an elected official and you can run your office as you choose. I have to say that when I heard the news that the 3 of you voted unanimously to not talk about your budget with Cynthia, I'm not sure that's legal. And if it is, I'm not aware that it is, but you might want to explore that before you present that as an option. 2, I would remind you that if you're taking a vote and it's in your minutes, it should follow Robert's rules, and there should have been somebody who moved it, seconded, so on and so forth. So we know exactly how that came about.
Okay.
But Cynthia is our town manager. She's the person that does this for us so that we don't have to deal with it. So for us to have to spend our time and energy thinking about these things, as you can tell from the sound of my voice, is frustrating and stressful, etc. I don't want to have to do it. And this has been a complicated problem with you, Kathleen. I'm sorry to sort of air this, but that's the reality, and it doesn't need to be. I'm very hesitant to increase the salary budget because I think a big problem with the salary is lack of efficiency in the lister's office. I think that job should be able to be done within the hours that are allotted and at the salary that's been allotted. You got a raise when you first came into that office or the salary was changed when you first came into that office by your encouragement. We accepted that as part of the budget. You know, I think you should be able to do that job in the amount of time that's allotted to you. I'm not the elected official running that office, so I can't tell you that that's what it has to be. We can, however, we have the right as the select board to set the salary line for that office.
Absolutely.
And I personally feel that it should be limited to this amount because I feel that the job should be able to be done in that amount of time. I think education perhaps should be separated out as for the reasons I mentioned, but I think it should be visible and transparent what's going into education versus salary. But I have a problem with the transparency of hours in this office, and I think they should be more accurately recorded and presented because it's taxpayer money being spent, and I don't think it's being spent appropriately, honestly.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to hear you say that.
Yep.
I mean, but I'm glad to hear you say that, because I have certainly been trying to reach you guys when there have been problems in-house, so to speak. I mean, not in the lister's office, because we're actually getting the job done regardless of what the state throws at us. And they do throw different things at us each year. So we've been doing that. I haven't gotten calls back when I have called.
Well,
Specifically-
but we spoke here in the hallway about that. And then additionally though, I mean, this meeting that I saw the minutes from, that you guys made this decision, was October 12th. If it was that big a deal, why didn't you send us the minutes? I didn't even know the meeting had occurred. So that would have been a real prompting reason for us to contact you.
I did contact you.
Well, you did contact me, but you weren't very specific as to why. And we chatted out here in the hall briefly, and it
Right.
sounded like everything was fine then, and so I didn't call you back.
Okay.
I mean, part of this also, from my perspective, and I don't know what the communication between you was, but again, this is our town manager. This is what she does for us. She deals with the different departments, their budgets, their salaries, education, everything about it, so that we aren't dealing with it. You are the one area where that's been a significant problem for us, ongoing for a number of years, and it's frustrating. And I don't want to spend my time outside of these meetings doing that kind of stuff when I don't have to, because our town manager should be able to do that for us. The fact that we have a very capable, very competent town manager is what allows, you know, people like us who are very busy and, you know, in my case, self-employed. I can't be spending time outside of, you know, basically meeting time that I don't have to, and I spend a huge amount of time outside meeting time that I have to for various different reasons, but we shouldn't have to nitpick about stuff like this. I'm sorry, it shouldn't be an issue that we're dealing with. And again, it's been a problem specific to this office, so.
Okay, so
I
when
just wanna
there
point
is
that
an
out.
issue, what do we do?
I mean, the basic chain of command is you would go to the town manager. And I know you have done that, and I know you
Right.
find that frustrating
No,
and
actually-
problematic.
Actually, no. I mean, whenever I do deal with Cynthia, I go in and I talk to her and we talk about it. I mean, the last meeting that we had it came up that we were frustrated, and I did contact your chair because there was a quote in the paper about how irresponsible we're being, and quite frankly, we're not being irresponsible. It's not good for the town and it's not good for us. And it was frustrating, and I did call you, and I
Yeah.
called you a couple times, and I did email.
And we chatted in the hallway.
More than that, more than chatting in the hallway, I expressed to you that I needed to talk with you. And I don't feel that saying more than I need to talk to you it should at least warrant a phone call back or an email back. And I'm not saying that we don't have an incredibly competent town manager. We do. As a taxpayer, I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased. As an elected official, yeah, there are some scratchy parts, and you know, we certainly work through them. I don't feel like it's an unworkable thing. I feel like if there's a problem, there should be a place where it can be aired.
This is
That's what we're doing now. And
Right.
I have to tell you, I mean, I have spent a lot of hours talking about this issue.
But not with me.
With you, as well as others. Well, just generally, I mean, we've had discussions about, probably not specifically about this, but you and I talk from time to time about various things, and I guess I was hoping that it was going to be an issue that you could resolve, because I don't feel it's an issue we should have. We've never had a meeting like this, I have to be honest with you, in which we're sort of airing stuff that's become incredibly frustrating for us that we have to deal with, you know?
Well, okay, so then moving forward, the best thing for us to do is to make sure that if there's a problem, we're all aware of it. I mean, yes, Cynthia is very bright at what she does and very sharp with numbers. Honestly, it's great. It's great. I mean, when I was putting together our few items that are on the budget, I did everything I could to make it as transparent as possible. But the truth is that it is helpful to be able to go into her. I mean, I almost went in there today and said, look, these are the things I'm going to hand to them. What do you think? And then I just put it together because I figured that we would just go over it. I mean, there are so few items on here to discuss, you know, that I just went ahead and did it. But I don't want anybody to suffer frustration that, yes, can be handled outside of a public meeting. Absolutely. Absolutely. So.
Can I say something?
Please.
The one thing that I want to make sure that we clear the air about today is that it was very clear in your minutes that I misinformed the select board of something.
Mm-hmm.
So let's figure out what those things are that you guys think that I misinformed them about. Let's all talk about it so we're all in the same room and make sure I haven't made a mistake. And let's figure it out. But seeing that in the minutes, when not one of you have come to talk to me to ask me a question or tell me what I've misinformed them about, was a little bit surprising. So let's just figure it out. Let's get the right information out there if there's something.
Let's get that article.
Okay, well, I think it's in with the minutes, because that's what, I mean, I think it's in the book, right? In
What?
In the book with the minutes? Is the article in the book with the minutes?
The newspaper
The
article?
Yeah.
piece that was in the paper.
Yeah.
The one that my mother dropped off at my house.
Yeah, I believe that is in there.
Yeah.
Which, I
I'm assuming
read this
it's-
article, but I'm
It
not.
was late August, early September.
I'm assuming
There
it's
was
the
a
meeting that she was talking about where I said that it was
It
irresponsible.
wasn't just me talking about it. All of us talked about it. And
Yeah,
yes,
no, that's
should
fine. I
have
just thought,
Robert's
let's
rules
just
in it.
clear the
Yeah.
air and just get it over with.
And I'm the new guy, so I don't understand all of the nuances
Right.
of town government. But when my mom drops off an article saying that we're being irresponsible about our spending from the report of the Putney Selectboard, completely blindsided. You know, I agree with you that there should be communication between the lister's office and the city manager so that the select board doesn't deal with
Doesn't seem to be.
the nitpicky things of governance.
Right.
We were
The article is in the
blindsided.
binder.
We were
It's in
blindsided
the
by
lister
that.
binder.
There was no,
That is-
there was no
Yeah, it's in the-
discussion
The article's in there.
Because I
from
couldn't find
the
it.
town managers, the
Well, that's
listeners.
something-
Well, there, you,
And that's where it's this is difficult between me and you guys, is this has been going on for a couple of years.
Long time.
It's right
So,
here.
and
it ha-
that may be, but at about the time, and I want the article because there was a percentage of our budget. And when we got the numbers from Laura, the number was different and lower. And maybe this number isn't accurate. Whereas,
I know.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's this stuff.
Right, because at the time that happened, the hours were a little higher, so the percentage of the budget that had been spent.
Was different from this?
Yeah, probably, yeah. I'd have
Well, I mean, this
to
is-
find the report from then,
Right, but
from
these are
that
the
day that I
things
printed it.
that, these are the things that we get every
and
month. So,
what's the date of the article?
October 12th,
yeah, so
October 12th.
this is the
in the
September.
reformer.
and Reformer.
So it was the night before or something that we talked about it. Because I think I gave you an updated financial report, and you read right off the report the percentage of the budget that had been spent up to that point.
What's the percentage?
I'd have to go print one from that day, and I can do that.
Well, I have one from the day after, if that's the 12th.
Listers at the town.
It's at the very end of the article.
Here?
Starts.
Is there a percentage
it's not on this page. I don't know whether there's
Is there
another,
a
it says continue. No, I don't think it is. I
No, I
don't
think
see
that's
a
the whole
percentage.
article.
I remember them
let's
talking
see.
about the number of
Listers
hours.
Listers at Town Hall are budgeted for 26 hours per week and have been registering an average of 32 hours per week since July, the start of the fiscal year. Select Board members supported Stoddard in addressing this matter, as she explained that they have gone over budget in this area for about 2 years. And then an unfortunate quote from Cynthia, it creates animosity and is irresponsible. I can see how that
And
creates animosity.
And then put that in context. How many BCA hearings did we have in July and August? How many abatement hearings were there? You know, if you think about all of that extra stuff that happened just at that time of year, you know, in the past 60 days, I doubt I've worked more than 4 or 5 hours in the Lister's office.
Which is why
But at that particular time, when we were sitting down at the fire station, when we were in here, you know, we have 2 meetings a week? You know, so it was rather extraordinary circumstances. And if an issue like that comes up, how great would it be if we could communicate about that then, before it hits?
And I hope that we can in the future, but I just want to clear, and I do want to clear the air with you. My comments that night, without trying to single somebody out, because unlike you guys, where you sometimes can meet as 3 people and talk about things, that maybe you should warn more than you do. I don't know what you were talking about in there tonight before this meeting, but we don't have that luxury of doing that. So when I talked about that night, it was directed towards Kathleen, but I generalized the office. And unfortunately, you got in the crossfire. She's been putting in way more hours than are budgeted for her.
Okay.
And you
So-
guys have not been putting, that's why I was specifically addressing Kathleen also. And this
So-
is not this was an unusual time period, I will give you that. However, correct me if I'm wrong, the salary budget has been over budget. The salary line item has been over budget for.
It was not over budget last year. The entire budget was over by a small amount. The 2 years prior, they were over budget both years.
The 2 years prior, but this last year, like when I get these monthly things for us, these show the percentage of salaries. So that's what
Right, but-
that's what we go by.
But
I
you
mean,
guys have to understand that part of my job
Mhm.
is to project what's gonna happen at
Oh,
June
sure.
30th. No, don't just say, oh, sure, because I've said this a million times,
okay.
is to project June 30th. And if we have 26 hours budgeted and we're averaging within the last 10 or 12 weeks, 32, 30, we're going to be over budget. It's very simple math. And I was concerned if I did not bring it up again, it would happen again. Because I didn't feel comfortable coming to you about it because we've had issues communicating about the hours that you work. It's very difficult when that's my job to make sure, and I hope that you don't feel singled out because I do it with everybody.
Okay, well, all right.
And so that's where I'm coming from. That's my job.
However, she is being singled out in this instance of the lister's office because you're the head lister and you put in the vast majority of hours in the lister's office.
And
we
I've also
understand
done
that.
it for 8 years. I've also done what I'm doing in here. Also, our budget this last year was a fallout from the reappraisal. I mean, the reappraisal happened and then people come in for the reappraisal and then people come in for the reappraisal the year after. So I mean, we worked very hard at staying within budget. I mean, Cynthia and I can certainly work harder at communicating between the two of us, but as far as what the three of us do in there, I mean, it is very complicated, and we do the best we can. We always keep in mind that we're spending the taxpayers' money. I talk to people every day who have trouble making their taxes, Josh. I'm not in there wasting time, you know? And I mean, as far as the last minutes go, the three of us got together. He had just gotten that article. We had just seen it that day. And it's a draft. We haven't approved those minutes. And yes, you're right, it should be more Robert's rules as far as taking minutes go, absolutely. But that is a draft, and part of it was absolutely an affront, you know. As far as what we were talking about in there before this meeting goes, we were talking about our work sessions coming up because we have viewings. I mean, one of the things I'd love to be able to do is spend less time doing our budget, you know, preparing for this, but of course I had to prepare for this because it is an increase in salary line. And quite honestly, these two guys are learning what has to be done in there. But the state isn't leveling what they're asking for us. I mean, we're not the only town having this problem with the state asking us to do more stuff. That's why I included other towns that are similar in size and stuff so that you could see the budget that we're asking for is on the low end of what everybody else is doing. I mean, we don't waste any time, you know, and I mean, it's one of those things that have to remain flexible throughout the year. And these guys are actually flexible, and it's all working. We're fortunate. We have 3 listers. Everybody's in here, and everybody's ready to work. We're fortunate in that the state has courses. More than likely, there's 1 course a year for each of us, you know, which would be great to do. Our budget last year and the year before was $750 in the education, and that was in part because we were going through the reappraisal. The only reason we're bringing it back up to $1,500 is because that's what it was before we did the reappraisal. I mean, we didn't have any time to go to classes for the reappraisal. And then there's a $400 or $393 that's given from the state towards that. So we put in for $1,100 instead of $750 for the education because we need to do it.
That's fine. I don't know problem
Yeah.
with the education line item.
And see, this is the kind of thing that is very frustrating to me, is that if you guys had sat down with me, or if one of you sat down with me with this budget, I would have said you need $2,000 in there for education. You have 2 brand new listers. You need more. If you want a day of NIMRIC to come here, it's going to cost us $900.
Well, actually, the education committee that's working on the courses that are coming up, I mean, they'll be like perfectly placed courses for
I know.
what he doesn't know and what he doesn't know coming up. And whether or not NIMRIC comes here, I mean, there are courses that the state offers, and it's very valuable to be in a room full of
And I
listers.
totally get that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to have to do the work in the lister's office. Trust me, this is not a power trip. But I've been in this business for 25 years. I worked for NIMRIC for 13. I know how valuable it is to have someone sit next to 2 brand new people and go over menu item by menu item by menu item in a software program and tell you everything that that's capable of doing. And I've suggested that and I've asked that, and it just seems like you just don't want to take that advice. And I'm talking about putting more money in because I think that's a valuable thing that this town needs. And that's okay if you don't, but these are the kinds of things that we could sit down together and not do. And then we come as a united front and say, you know, we've vetted this. This is what I do with every single department here. And it's, you know, I think $1,100 for 2 brand new listers is not enough money.
Well, I do look forward to sitting down with you, and I do look forward to...
Well, we need to do this tonight, make some decisions on the budget, because it's really, I can't move forward with knowing.
Well, the other problem we have with the head lister being at 28 hours a week is that it changes the equation for us as far as what that compensation actually looks like. And I don't know whether you're aware of that or not, but when you get over 24 hours a week, you become a full-time employee, and that makes you eligible for VEMRs. That, I don't know to what percent that changes the equation, but that's been part of the reasoning in the past, that it hasn't been a more than 24-hour a week position.
I
What's
thought
that?
it was 30 hours? No, it's not?
It depends on what we're talking about, but for VEMRs, it's 24 hours.
4 hours.
And,
What is
and
VEMR's?
it's municipal retirement.
Oh.
And
Well,
because you've been working more than that, we've been having to cover ourselves with VEMRs and making notes that we've said it's only 22 hours and making sure that
Yeah, it
we've
wasn't-
relayed to you that you can only work 22 hours, because if we allow that to go on for too long without documentation that we've said that's not what we've approved, we have to pay you VEMRs. We have to pay you retirement. It's the law.
Okay, well, I'm not aware of
Yeah.
VEMR's, but
And
I
at
am
this
now.
point right now, we're not violating that because of the documentation that we've done, but.
oh, so then if it changes from the 22 documented to the 28 documented, then it changes.
And the other thing that happens when you work over the 22 that are allotted, the other 4 hours we have allotted are at a different salary. So we're now paying you more money. We're
We're
paying you at a higher rate.
Right, but all of that, all right, so let me just back up for a minute. Are we on track with our budget for the,
I'd have to print a report today. I didn't print one today. I mean, I don't think your hours have been too high the last couple of weeks, so we may be, I don't know.
because my understanding is that we are remaining within budget. Whoever's doing it, we're remaining within budget. That's my understanding. That's what the monthly reports that I get have said. So that's what I've been going by. I didn't know about this other caveat about VEMRs, but that's what when we have our monthly meetings, that's what we talk about. And that sheet that I get, that monthly sheet, that's our budget. That's what we hang our hat on, is these are the numbers that we have. And each month, that's what we get.
Right, but I'm hoping that having this conversation in this setting is helping you to understand why there's other things that I have to think about that may feel like a personal kind of attack on you when they're not. It's just the nature of our business, and when we do things, it affects many other things. There have been times you've put in over 40 hours and we sit and struggle, do we pay our overtime? Are we legally obligated to pay overtime? We don't know. So it's just this very, it's difficult. It's been difficult. And you know, I'm dealing with other, like you said, this is a very small budget compared to our overall budget. And I'm dealing with 2 other department heads that go line by line by line. And if you think that I'm tough on this, it's a good thing you weren't here yesterday when Tom and I were screaming at each other.
Well, I certainly appreciate.
I mean, it's just.
I appreciate, okay, and knowing more is good. I mean, what I will say is that when we talk and it's public, we make minutes. Otherwise, they're work sessions. You guys, you do your public thing, and then you go into executive session, you do whatever that is. But if we need to have more of a, there's obviously more layers to this because of the 22-hour thing. It's something that I'm unaware of. So it sounds like what it has to be is Cynthia and I sitting down and figuring out the best way to communicate. Because when this happened and then we made the minutes, it was based on the fact that we had just read the article. Turns out we were having a meeting anyway. I mean, we had a scheduled meeting, and the draft of minutes went in the binder like they're supposed to do. You know, I mean, sure. I probably should have walked in.
But if that's in your minutes and it was in your discussion,
It's
then
in,
it should be in your minutes whether it's a
yeah.
draft or not. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
sort of irrelevant.
No, absolutely. But I mean, I do find that the draft is usually like the kind of like put it, you know, get the minute together. I mean, get the meeting together, put everything in there, and then go. And then you know, like we don't omit things, but we certainly fix things so that there's a little bit more continuity in the, you know, in the minutes at the end. But
The draft shouldn't,
it doesn't not represent what happened. I know it has to
No,
represent what
and it
happened.
really should be a thorough, it should be the minutes, but it's basically a draft so that you can all read them and approve them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an outline.
Right.
That's to be
I am sorry,
submitted.
I didn't mean
Okay.
to imply
and I
that.
totally am okay with, if that was your frustration and that's what you talked about, that's what you talked about. I have no problem with somebody being frustrated with me or that they think I've made a mistake, or I have no problem with that. And I don't, if I was in your shoes, I probably would have felt exactly the way you felt, like I was blindsided. And I apologize that that happened to you individually. Chris, I'm sorry that that happened to you. Kathleen, it's not something that we want to air out in public, and that's the choice of words I made. I did feel at that point that you were being irresponsible with not keeping in with your hours. That's how I felt at that minute, just like that's how you guys felt at the minute. So let's try to move forward. But I do have to tell you, I personally am struggling with you needing that many hours a week when I know there are people in this office, namely Laura, who does the job of 7 people and keeps her hours within 35. And if she doesn't, and if she has more work than what she can do in a week, she has to take time off to compensate. She can't get paid more money than what's in the budget. And that's extremely frustrating.
Okay,
And that's where the animosity part, not just, I don't want to point out Laura, but it's a kind of a,
All right, let me just point something out. I'm an elected official who gets no benefits. It is
Yeah.
not the same thing as what anybody else on this side of the building
I'm
is
not sure
doing.
what not getting benefits has to do with that.
What it has to do with it is I get to do lister work, and when I compare budgets with other listers, it's with other listers. It's not with assistants in the other, in other areas in town. You know, like I don't compare my budget with Laura's or with
I'm
That's
yours.
not what she's saying.
And that's not
No.
what I'm saying at all.
Okay,
I'm not
but
talking about numbers. I'm talking about,
I'm talking about hours. I am talking about hours, and I mean, and I've spent a lot of time talking to other listers who do the amount of hours that they do because the job takes that many hours to do. I mean, I have talked to many people who feel that we're even underfunded at the budget we're coming to the town with. But I said to them, no. I mean, like I feel that we can do this. It's going to be a struggle, but it's not impossible to do. And yeah, I mean, you know, I suppose we could say, okay, we want to compare ourselves to all the other towns that are our size, and then our budget would be more. We would be asking for more, but we honestly feel that we can do this work in this amount of time. And this amount of time translates to this much money. That's the way that it worked. I mean, it wasn't more sorted than that. It wasn't more involved than that. And it's not. It's just a matter of this is what the job takes to do. And in talking to other listers and in just going over what the state, you know, because I've talked to my district advisor, I've talked to the head of PV&R. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people preparing this budget, you know, because I do feel like this is an accurate assessment of what we need.
Well, I mean, you can look at, compare them with other towns, like you say. I mean, I compared them also, but statewide.
Okay.
And you're not underfunded compared to many other towns the exact same size. Much closer to size. A town like Vernon is probably going to be much more expensive because they have an extremely complicated system of listing with Vermont Yankee and everything.
Right,
So-
but they pull those out differently. I mean, that's why I included, you know, like the stuff that I was able to get from the other towns, I stapled and put in there so that you could see. Because when I did talk to them, I did want to find out, you know. I mean, and each town has its own little thing, you know. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, Dummerston has a whole different thing going on because one of their listers is also a zoning administrator who's there full time. So every town is going to have their own little thing, which is why comparing them to other towns, you have to be a little, like you have to take that into consideration.
Mhm.
What works for us here is to be flexible in there. And during the times of year when it is very busy, be in here. I mean, I just put in a time card for 8 hours or 7 hours or something this last week. I mean, it just depends. I mean, the week moving forward, it'll be the same kind of a thing, And then other weeks, yeah, it's up there. And, I mean, that's why the average that I came up with at 28 is defendable in my mind for the work that's getting done in there. I mean, also there was a time when Putney had a pretty bad reputation with the state, and that's not so now. And it's not so because when they ask for something, they get it. And there's no other relationship to have with them but that.
All right, but you're asking for 32 hours.
I'm asking for 32.
For that, she's asking for 28 for the head lister.
Right, another, an extra hours, right?
I mean, again, we run into this Beamer's problem, which changes the equation, and I'm not sure we have that data readily available to tell us exactly what that means. But I don't know whether that means, and I don't know whether it's possible to be leaning a little bit harder on the assistant listers in order to get some of that work done.
Or is there a way to not do the VEMAs? I mean, is there a way to sign off on that? Not. No. Okay. So that.
I mean,
caveat.
personally, what was it you that just said that about leaning? I mean, I don't know what they have for time. I mean, I would think that would be up to them, but it would seem to me like you need to start spreading the hours out a little bit more evenly between the three of you, because if something happens to you,
it is absolutely one of the reasons. Yeah, it is absolutely one of the reasons that we wanted the education piece too to be bounced up.
Which is when are you guys getting more education?
It's right after town meeting. That's when the courses come out. I mean, that's when they all come out. Like that's when the state issues them. And then they sort of put them into different parts of the year. But they're all front-loaded, spring, summer.
I mean, I think part of and this is something obviously the other two would not know about, is part of why I feel just not good about that number of hours is because 2 years ago when we sat with Ruby, I was told that we absolutely will be able to cut these hours within another year because the reappraisal will be done, the process will be, and it'll be more just routine stuff. And that just doesn't seem to be what's being said now, and I don't understand that.
Well, I can speak to that a little bit.
Okay.
Because the legislature changed the current use. Or rather, they put the easy out in. When that easy out option came in, that changed a lot of things. I spent a lot more time in there doing current use. Prior to that, which was something that Ruby had talked about, that we thought that it would just be maintenance as usual, the property transfers, the viewing, stuff like that. We didn't realize that after the reappraisal, it was going to be 2 years out, that we were still going to be dealing with the reappraisal. Basically,
the easy out thing done this year?
No, the easy out thing happened this year.
Right, so that's not going to be for the next budget cycle.
Well, I don't know. I mean, what I know is that usually current use, by November, I have all of our current use in. Current use goes the calendar year. Usually by November, I have all of the bits of current use.
Right, but all I'm asking is that because you said
and I'm answering it.
No, I'm asking that you said that the hours were more this time because they did the easy out this year, the opt out or whatever it's called. But that's a one-time thing this year.
And I'm going to continue to answer your question.
Okay.
All right. Normally, with current use, since it follows the calendar year, by November, I have all the changes that go back and forth throughout. Now what's happening is the district advisor let us know that they won't even all be done coming in until February, sometime in February. That's their anticipated date for having the current use stuff done. That's in direct relationship to that easy out option. Now, the state didn't anticipate it taking that long. And so anytime that we anticipate time, we're doing the best we can. But I mean, I would have definitely thought that that easy out option would have all been done by now. I know it's not going to be done till February.
Right.
Is that going to affect my numbers yet next year? I have no idea how. I mean, all that I mean, as far as hours and time that it takes.
Right, but when I'm talking next year, I'm talking July to June. I'm not talking January to June.
Right. Okay. But
So
I'm
if
trying
that's
to
not-
give you an example about what happens. Okay. One of the things that you said was that Ruby, you cited that Ruby said after the reappraisal everything would be kind of just maintenance, which we honestly thought it would be. We didn't realize that the fallout from the reappraisal was not going to be just for the year that we had NIMRIC here working with us doing the reappraisal. It was going to be longer than that because it was just because it's working out to be longer than that. People are grieving their reappraisal value this past year. That's a lot of our grievances that we dealt with. You know, that's what a lot of
But that's now, I think Cynthia's point is that a lot of that, what would appear to be a peak in the work related to that, the work related to current use, et cetera, has leveled out. We should be back
I am
sort of
absolutely
down
hoping that's
to
the
where,
case.
yeah.
And we are. And I mean, as these guys are learning, and they are in there learning the stuff that I do, absolutely, we are hoping that's the case. All I had to go by were the numbers and the things that I was looking at, and the other lister's office the other ones that I spoke with, and my district advisor and the head of PV&R. All of that research went into this budget. That's why the number is what it's at. I had no idea about the 22-hour threshold with VEMA's. I didn't, and certainly Cynthia and I can communicate better, absolutely, so that when those caveats come in, I can be aware of them. Would that change the numbers? I mean, it's still going to work out to be whatever it's going to need to be. These guys are going to get up to speed. Eventually, they are. I mean, there isn't any way around it. It's not good for the town to just have me knowing. They have to know.
Right.
So that is our desired outcome as we move forward. Absolutely. But right now, and for the foreseeable future, coming up this year, there'll be one person in the office on a regular basis doing the bulk of the time, and that's me. And then as they learn more and as they pick different parts that they're going to be doing and getting more specialized at, great. But it's the whole picture. It isn't just one part. It's all of it. So I don't know. I don't know what we should do as far as the VEMA's thing go. I mean, it's obviously something that requires a little bit more. So I don't know. So I don't know if we're going to be able to solve this quandary tonight.
Out of curiosity, John and Chris, are you available to work more hours?
Yes.
Are you interested in working more hours?
Getting
Yes.
training and whatnot to.
I'm available with more hours.
And do you guys feel that you are at a level where you could sort of be productive in the office on your own, or, I mean, is there sufficient?
I like Cynthia's idea of teaching us how to work the software.
Yeah.
I know how to look at the maps. I can look up a parcel if somebody has a question.
Yeah.
In terms of changing something that might affect the grand list, I'm not confident.
sure
I'm not
you're not
confident doing that. All of a sudden, the shack down the road is worth $1 million. That's not
make the paper.
that's not good value.
Give everybody a $2 million raise like I tried to do earlier.
But in terms of answering the phone, answering a question from the database,
Basically comfortable.
yeah,
I mean,
I mean, I think that the training with NIMRIC should not we shouldn't wait until this budget to cover it. We should find the money
Well,
in our
that's what-
budget now.
That's what I was
We
thinking.
we can
That
find
would
that
be-
money.
Because
And
that,
get
that
that
doesn't
done.
carry
Well
that
spent.
uncertainty on for
And
another
get them
period
here
of time until after
in
town meeting.
January or
and
something.
Yes.
Yeah.
of course, it's early
That seems
voting.
extremely
If you do
prudent.
that on Monday or Tuesday, that'd be
Okay.
nice.
Yeah.
Not Martin Luther King.
Well, also since we have the April 1st deadline coming up, we'll have to make that happen between the viewings and stuff, because we still have a lot of those to do. For January, February, March, I just mean, you know, looking forward, that's one of the things that we do now, because April 1st is when we have to have all those changes in.
Right,
So-
but if you have a 4-hour training on a Monday, I don't think that's gonna affect
No.
that schedule too much.
Just not Martin Luther King. It's a big ski day.
There you go.
I don't want to me. I don't know what to do.
No, I guess one of the questions I have then, I mean, is that if you two are trained better or more, however you want to look at it, then it seems like the efficiency in there could drastically increase, where you wouldn't need extra hours. You know what I mean? If you're working together like a machine and you don't have to say, hey, stop, Kathleen, look at this and enter this number. If you could just go ahead and do it, or whatever goes on in there, it seems like efficiency is drastically increased. So maybe that solves the problem of the extra hours.
Well, that will eventually be the case. It won't take one session with NIMRIC. It
Yeah.
will happen over the course of the year.
Right, but this is fiscal year 2017. So we're talking by the end of June.
Right,
You
and
could
this
have had a
is
lot
where
of
I was
training.
talking about, and when I sent the email that said they had voted on not spending above what was budgeted, but if you need more hours, and one of the things I think I specifically said in that email was, especially for training hours, that just come to us and just let us know that that's what it is. That way when I see, you know, that you have 15 hours and you have 15 hours one week, I mean, we're in a building where you guys don't even come in the same door as we do. We don't even know if you're here. So if I see 15 hours and 15 hours, I'll just know. They talked to us about it, and they're in here training all week long. To me, that's perfectly fine. It just alleviates that. Well, what the hell is this for? You know, no different than when I get a credit card statement from Brian or Tom, and I'm like, well, what's this charge for?
And we do recognize that you guys are elected officials.
Yeah.
And that you can come and go,
Yeah.
and you can do it as you wish to do it. I think,
And our monthly statement that we get from you guys that shows where we are in our budget is very important to us. We do look at it. We are responsible to that.
Right, but Kathleen, for 3 years, whether it's wages or whatever, it's been over budget. So
So this year, right,
I never in this whole conversation did I say that you were currently over budget. You are on track. If the hours that were being spent continued, you would be over budget. When you budget 26 and the average is 30 or 27 or whatever, it's very basic. You're going to be over budget.
right. And every year we have the same conversation.
We do.
About the December, January, February being different than other times of the year.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but 2 out of the last 3 years, the salary budget the line item has been over.
Yes.
So that seems to me like a legitimate concern if 66% of the time you're over budget.
Right, and so one could say, maybe the salary line is too low if we've been over budget for the last 2 years, or for those 2 years prior to this one. I mean,
But you
it
have
could-
extra people now.
Right, and I had 2 people then too.
But then Tim was
Ruby and
gone,
Tim.
Ruby was there for a while, but now you have 2 extra people. Again, if they're trained and are capable of doing a lot of the same stuff that you can do in there, it's gonna improve efficiency.
And
It's
it will
bound to.
alleviate the 24-hour issue that we have
Which
because
Right.
is a problem.
So then is it a 22 or a 24?
we said it was 24.
Oh, 24.
You're budgeted for 22 hours a week right now.
Right, but the Beamish thing,
It's 24.
Is
it
the
24?
threshold is 24.
okay.
But I think, I mean, besides increasing the efficiency, I think it's just very prudent for the town to have more than one person capable of entering, you know, the
Absolutely,
stuff in the
that is
software,
not,
so.
yeah, that is absolutely our goal. So I mean, if it was, instead of the 27 or 28 hours for the head lister, if it was 24, it would take care of the VEMA's thing.
No,
And then-
no, it'd have to be less than 24.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well, unless
Didn't you
you're
just say-
not that, I mean,
Right, but
whoever-
24 is the threshold.
Yeah, 24 is the
So
threshold.
if you are at 24,
oh, then that's
then
the,
MEMR's
Is that
kicks
okay?
in. So basically, it would be
Well, it has to
20,
be
it
less
would be
than
23, exactly.
Yeah.
okay.
Or 20, even 23 and a half, something along those
I
lines.
see.
But
So
less
it
than
can't- it can't
24,
be
can't be 24.
24,
no.
okay.
And the hope would be that, again, since we passed this apparent peak of need to do things related to reappraisal, current use, et cetera, that,
Yeah, well, the current use was its own animal, and I'm not thinking that the legislature's gonna go in and monkey with it again. They might, who knows? I mean, who knows? The state is gonna do what the state is gonna do. What I do know is that the state very much so appreciates that whatever they ask for, they do get from us. That was not always the case.
Right, I just want to make a statement about that. All of us, whether we're elected officials or not in this office, all of us deal with state mandates that we may not be budgeting our time for in any given year. We constantly run into that. I mean, the town clerk's office runs into it constantly. I mean, the state mandate of the voter checklist stuff has consumed Denise's time. So we all run into those state mandates that we don't expect. And it's difficult. It's frustrating, but that's not unusual. That's not
That's
a
what it
lister
is.
office
yeah, specific.
specific.
Well, I do kind of wonder, like the other town budgets that I put in here, you know, with salaries and with all of their budget, I do kind of wonder what they do as far as VEMAs go then. Because obviously,
Well, it's probably, if it's over 24 hours for any one person, they're paying Beamers, which
Right.
is probably part of the reason why their budgets are higher.
Right,
Right.
and that's a policy change that
Exactly.
is not impossible for any town to do if they want to do it. It's just has to be part of the discussion, and if it's going to be that way, then it has to be a decision that, you know, your elected listers are also going to receive.
Which I don't, I mean,
Well, the town clerk does.
I'm
She's
assuming,
elected,
right,
yeah.
but that's a full-time position. I mean, that's a separate
Yeah,
entity, but I don't know whether that's an appropriate, I mean, is that a decision we would make here, or would that be a town meeting day type of discussion? I don't really know.
yeah, I would have to,
I don't know, I mean, I would wonder too, with these other budgets that I put in, if they're adhering to the 24-hour threshold, or under 24-hour threshold thing, then I wonder if this is distributed differently, you know, between
Right.
three
We don't-
listers.
yeah, we don't.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I do know that Anita holds 2 elected positions with, you know, which is different. I mean, I hold
right, and at
2,
one point,
but-
I think the town clerk position and treasurer negotiated getting benefits, so is that
Right.
correct?
I think that sounds correct.
Yeah.
That was a while ago, but,
Yeah, so we're not looking to negotiate to get benefits necessarily, because that, I mean.
Right, but just
The
by the
things-
nature of getting those hours, we're
happens
obligated
Right, I
legally.
do
Yeah,
understand,
okay.
I do understand, I mean, this is new news, but, I mean, for us. So, I just mean that, I wonder if in the other listers' offices, if they adhere to that in whatever way they do, I don't know, I didn't ask.
well, I mean, if they're, it's,
If they have 3 listers and they have it listed as
well,
a,
and or they, like Cynthia said, they may have decided that they're gonna, that whoever their head lister is gets
I see, I see.
a benefit package, of
Yeah.
whatever that looks like.
Some of the towns I've
based
talked
on
to,
the
they don't
salary.
have they equally split the hours. They
Right,
all work,
exactly.
you know,
It depends.
Dummerston, they
Yeah,
work,
that's a different way to do it.
yeah,
but-
they work so many hours.
But
a
it
week.
would be, it would have to be a decision that was made to sort of approve that to be what it is.
So if we distributed the 32 hours that are being proposed in this $28,000 number between the 3 of them, which is 5 hours for the other 2 and then 23 for the head lister. That's a $25,922 budget
Instead of the
instead of
28.
28. I mean, and then I think that some money should be put in the training line
I would agree.
to cover some training and hours related to training for the new, not just the new listers. I mean, obviously there's, everybody needs training, but the bulk of it.
Right.
So then in the education line would be the hours that we spend going to classes too? Is that?
Yes, to segregate it.
Right.
That's what you suggested, right? Yeah.
I think it would,
That way you
it would
can get
err
an
on the
ac-
side of transparency.
That way you could get an
know.
accurate number of how many hours
Hours it takes.
it takes
Right.
to do
Right.
training
Train somebody.
annually. So
Right.
in a future budget, you could
Say,
say,
this is
we
what
have
the
2 new
training budget
listers in
is.
XYZ, and this is how much training time
It was
took.
that year.
Because
yeah.
any year you can have new listers and
Right.
they may need training, so.
Right, and even at my level, there'll be training that I'm
Right.
required to take too, so. And it behooves the town to have us as
And I don't know what
trained
that
as we
number
can
would be. Maybe you up it to 2,000 instead of 1,000 and see how it goes.
Is that something you want to and or need to research a little bit, or not necessarily?
I
Or do you wanna
I
put
know
2,000
because
on that?
I would
Well,
just
okay.
put it in there because I don't think you can really. I mean, and yeah, I don't. I think you just plunk a number in there until go through a whole year, but.
Well, so one option we have then is to come up with another travel meeting education line number. Come up with a new number for that. If we go with the 25 and change that she came up with the salary line, and then submit it to you guys again, and Cynthia and I could sit down and figure out, because she's a sharp pencil, we could figure out by looking back to see what, or even just looking forward. I mean, like the classes take X amount of hours. There's, I mean, that's a pretty predictable thing. I mean, even in
Right.
talking to the education committee now, I know that there'll be at least one class for each of us coming up in the spring. So, and they all are far away. Nobody does anything in the south, so
Right.
we
Right,
have
but
to
we're
travel.
talking next budget year. So,
Right.
So that's why I just said, I think because it is kind of an unknown, I think you just put a number in there right now
Yeah.
and we visit it as it happens.
Yeah.
It may end up that the next year we say, well, we put 3,000 in, or you don't need that much, but just a good,
Oh, I see, so just put it in so
Yeah.
that it marks the place now.
Right,
and
we're
then
talking about
so-
numbers that start
July 1st.
July 1st, 2016
Right.
through June 30th,
I see.
2017.
2017.
I
Exactly.
see.
Now,
But-
you also, when you plugged in that salary number, Cynthia, it sounded to me like you did 5, 5, and 23.
Oh, I did.
Which puts
It-
us
well,
at 33 hours.
it-
So if you did 5,
I
5,
did
and
4.5 and I have it
Oh.
only out to one place, so it rounded up in the field, but I think it calculated out.
So why don't you just, out of interest, do 5, 5, and 22?
Oops.
Well, if she does 5, 5, and 23,
Then
That's-
that's 33 hours.
right, and 33 for the whole office though, so that still isn't a problem with the Beamers.
No,
No, but it's more than what
were-
you asked
It was
for.
more than what you were asking for, yeah.
But it's a budget. It's a proposed budget.
Well,
Oh,
this
I see,
This
okay.
is what I want to make really clear when we finalize a number. When it says you have 32, and I know that it fluctuates. I get that to some extent, which is really hard to gauge over the whole year because you don't, I don't know, it's just really hard to do. But when do we say, I don't know how to put this. If you're working
You gotta
20
not be in the office for the next 2 weeks, because
Well,
you're
I
over
mean,
budget.
this is why the monthly reports that we get are very valuable, because that's when we can actually see.
Shows you what that is.
It shows what the percentage is, and we know. And also, we can anticipate, because there are times when it is really, really slow. Like,
But it is
And then there are
number
times-
of hours a week.
Also.
I mean,
Right.
also.
right,
So-
but I mean, the only thing that we can do is manage the office to the best of our ability. That's what we're
Well,
doing.
except this is Cynthia's point. To the best of your ability means you don't do more than 22 hours a week. That's what everybody else in the office does.
That's
Because
what-
that's
that's
what
my
they
point.
have to
And then the
do.
busy times of the year, when I'm needed in there more, as opposed to the times of the year when I'm not, that still equals out.
Hopefully
They'll
they
pick
have
up
training,
the-
right,
yeah.
but it doesn't, it's based on a weekly thing. That's what Cynthia was saying. Once you get above X number of hours per week, your salary goes up per week, so you get paid more. That's not the way it should work. That's not the
I
way
mean,
it should
maybe it's
be.
and maybe it's if you work 26 hours that week, you don't get paid for those 6. But the next week you put the 6 on that next. I don't know how to do it. You know what I mean? It's the same way we do comp time. She works 40. She has to write 5 hours of comp time on her card. She doesn't get paid for that.
But in there are seasonal times.
Of
I mean,
course,
there are,
we
but-
all understand that. We know that there's seasonal times for everything.
Okay,
There's
so-
daily
hold on.
times for everything.
So then.
In
so then
January,
if-
she has to put a town report together
Right.
that takes hours.
Mhm.
That's a seasonal thing for her. Plus, she has all of her other work that she has to do. So it's really difficult. There are times when I have 20 zoning applications in a month, and I might not have any for 3 months. We squeeze our we
You
still
budget your
work
time.
in our hours that are allotted.
Right, and then when all those zoning things come to us, we have to look at them all during a certain, all by April 1st. And some of them are a percent complete. We don't look at those until close to April
Why?
1st. Because it's a percent complete. If
you're-
somebody
but
is
if you're
working on.
budgeting your time properly, you could have done most of that work in advance, and then when it comes down to the last week, you can say, okay, these are the things that need to be tidied up, and we're done.
And we are looking forward to doing that. Right now, we have 3 of us. He's gonna
Right,
run.
but when you're
Yeah, but
talking, you're saying me. I have to do and
I'm not saying me. I'm
Well-
saying we have right now 3 listers. Okay.
right, and I don't think you're utilizing them enough at this point to help you get the work done. Is what I'm
And that's
trying
one
to
of
say.
the reasons why the education came up, which is
Right.
why the salary line
Right.
went up, which is why everything came up. Because as they do get more educated, absolutely, that's the goal.
Right,
Absolutely.
but educating means just coming into the office and doing on-the-job training.
Right, and because our budget has been, we get our monthly statement, we go through it. Every month that they come in, they do learn. That's how it is. I mean, we're doing it. Is it happening fast enough? Obviously not, but we are doing it. I mean, Jonathan came on, when did you come on?
In May.
Right.
All right, so did you punch in the 10, the 5, 5, and 32? And what
And
does that-
22?
And, yeah, 5, 5.
25090.
I mean, this is not a final budget, so.
No, not
you
at
know,
all.
I
I mean, that
I
can
mean,
be just like the 2%
you know-
for everybody else. That can be
Right,
at
what
least
does
it's a
that come
number.
up to as a percentage
Increase.
increase? We're going from,
What did I say? 25090. 18%.
18%.
Does that include the education?
No, not yet. Because
So
the education is
that
in a
line.
different
that
line.
becomes a different line.
So
and
that goes down there. So it increases the overall budget by 26% by upping that to 2,000 and changing the salary line to 25,000.
And what was it at before? Do you remember?
32.
No,
Let's
what
see,
was the
it's right
salary
in
line
front
at
of you.
before?
What was the percentage change for the listers department
Close-
before?
close to 30.
We should have it on right here, right?
No, I don't think it's in here.
Before with what they
Taxes and salaries.
proposed?
No, yeah.
Yeah, that I
Oh,
thought
it
was
wasn't in here.
33.
Yeah, never mind.
Cynthia, wasn't that 33?
33%.
Yeah.
So this is not 33.
No.
No,
this
the
is
salary
20
line
this
is
is 20
18. the overall budget with everything
Right.
is 26.
And we don't know what that overall number was before, but
I thought it was 33, but I could be wrong.
I can tell you from that. I don't know what the or the 34.
so 26, so that's an 8% decrease from where we were. That's a starting point. Does that sound like a starting point to you?
Oh, sure.
The only other concern I have with the budget is the mapping line. I want to make sure I understand what we're doing with mapping, and I want to make sure that that's enough. Because there was a year we did some mapping that was not budgeted, and we way overspent a line item. So I don't know what that, I know it said in here that it was talking about
Approximately 2,800.
28 had been spent before. So I didn't know if this
Mm-hmm.
1,500 was a number that we got from somebody. I just don't want to.
speak to that a little bit.
Okay.
All right, our mapping group, Cartography Technologies, we traditionally have done the maps every 3 years. By doing the maps, I mean we take all the line strike changes and we produce new maps. We laminate them, we have them out there for research, and we have a program called Town View. The cartographers make those line strikes and we pay them for that. Because we have an average of like 21 or 22 line strikes to do every 3 years, that's why we were doing them approximately every 3 years. We could enter into a contract moving forward where we do it every year. The thing about the maps is that because the grand list is a fluid document, if you will. People are buying and selling property. People split their property or do whatever it is they do. So when we print the maps, it's as of that time. Those are the line strikes. We made the changes. That's it. The Town View software, where we're able to look up stuff and print, individual maps and stuff. All of that mirrors the time that we print the maps for the research. So, if we did it every year, we could anticipate it being approximately 7 line strikes. Now, the way that they charge us for line strikes is it isn't just X amount for each line strike. Because if you have a change that's minute, they charge us a little less. If it's more complex, they charge us a little more. So we averaged. I spoke to him because we've been dealing with him so long, and I said, this is how many, because I flipped through and I gave him a summary of what kind of things they were. That's the number we came up with. That's proposed, anticipated, between now and when they actually come in. It could change, I mean, right now, we could say that, they spoke to us and that's what they came up with. And that was based on what I have in the drawer right now that has to happen for the map changes. And that will happen for the map changes. So,
So the answer is yes, you've talked to him and that's the number that you guys came up with for the projection.
For the projection for what it is at this moment. By the time he comes in to do them,
Now, would it make sense, the town has to get new maps anyway, right?
Well,
or you're hoping to with overlays
We
and
would
things
like
like
to
that?
get overlays. I would like the whole mapping discussion to happen where we can talk about overlays of all of the different things we have in town, yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's a way of,
A little bit of economy of scale.
putting it all
well,
together.
Cynthia and I have talked about this in prior years.
Boswell is,
Oh, is it?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's their company.
Okay.
And her
Cartographer?
partner
David
do the
Green.
maps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're the ones that have done the maps.
And so if there's a way to do town-wide, with all of the features that would benefit everybody, and you can get some economies of scale, that's certainly an awesome.
Yeah.
Work done.
Yeah. And they're definitely willing to work with us. Cynthia and I talked about this in prior years. Probably the last time we printed the maps was probably the last time we had a discussion about it. And even if we talked to the other departments and got kind of a wish list of what everybody would like to see on the map, it would be great to do that even. Because the town view has options, that software has options. So, but because the maps are always on the Lister budget, if we were doing it as we were doing them, because they were last done in 2013, moving forward, this is what we can anticipate.
Okay. Do you want to address that issue of why TransCanada was put on there?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so why don't we address that? In the interest of time, I think we want to
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
wrap things
Move
up.
on, yeah.
I want to, the TransCanada legal fees were put into the Lister's budget, and at the time, I shouldn't say their budget, the actual expense was expended there. At the time that I did that, I went to Kathleen and I explained to her that that was going to happen, that it wasn't anything negative, it just needed to be put in there to keep it separate from our regular retainer fee, so that we could quickly run a report for the lawyer, so he could then in turn bill the state of Vermont to get the reimbursement for the legal fees. We cannot net a reimbursement to an expense line because it's against generally accepted accounting principles. We can't do that. We just had $13,000 worth of tools stolen at the town garage. His small tool line looks like he's over budget by $10,000. The reimbursement for that goes into a revenue line. Same thing. We can't net those two because it's the transparency of showing that we had this expense, here's the revenue side. So that was the reason that the two were not netted.
And then the auditor, during audit season, the auditor will reconcile that.
we will go through the line called refunds and other or whatever
And
it's
then
called.
And then they
and then it goes
generate.
away.
And if I don't do that, he'll pull it out anyway.
As a fault, yeah.
Yeah, and he'll
He'll cite it then,
he'll
then.
cite it as you need to recognize your revenue on one side and expense on the other side. So that's why that happened. It was not anything negative. It was not to make your budget look over budget. It was nothing. It was simple financial accounting.
Okay, great.
Is that okay? Did you have a question?
It was just the timing,
Yeah,
because it
okay.
happened right with mom dropping off the newspaper
I
on my
gotcha.
front porch, saying, why are you spending too much money? I happen to have lots of affection and respect for my mother, and want
I gotcha.
want the opposite to be true as well.
I just want you to know that my door is always open to whether it's what the hell is your problem, woman, or are you having a good day, woman? It's always open. We may not agree. We may have a heated conversation, but it's fine.
Yeah, a big part of the problem is I'm rarely in town during normal
Yeah.
business hours.
Well, if you need to see me another time, you call me.
I mean, my hours have just changed so that
Yeah.
I have days off in the week.
Because you're on the slopes.
Beautiful day. Beautiful day.
Yeah, nice and wide.
Okay.
All right.
Good,
Great.
thank you.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome to stay, don't feel like you have to.
I'm not sure we're gonna do much more.
No, we're not gonna do much more.
We'll, future report, maybe start pushing some warrants here.
Yeah, why don't you do that? So, as far as the rest of the budget is concerned, these are the two drafts. The capital plan, I have made a decision that we're gonna keep the borrowing process going. That whole trying to get out of it right now was gonna cost us more money
Then it's worth.
than it's worth.
Yeah.
So we'll keep an eye on that. So what's in the budget is a capital plan with the continuation of borrowing but purchasing the 5th dump truck
Yeah,
and pushing that other truck out to a couple of years, whatever it was.
yeah, no, and I think that Brian's point is well taken.
I do, yeah.
And that, we should try and be building capital and trying to minimize borrowing, but to try and do it, to
It
leap
just
into it
didn't.
and make it happen doesn't work, but
No.
we should all be cognizant of the fact that
Yeah.
that's a route we
There is-
should be taking.
If I projected correctly, within about 2 more years, we can start, if we
Putting
leave the
some of that
100,000
aside.
that's there now and just kind of keep it there, we can start building it in that year, and maybe by the time we buy the grader, there'll be enough for that.
Yeah,
And that will help us start getting out of that cycle, so. Yeah, no matter what I did, it was just more money.
not gonna be.
When you,
Plus, it's the time value of money.
and next week we'll talk
That's
to,
balance.
next week we'll talk to the library and the fire department, so we'll go,
Right.
so if you wanna look at specific parts of the budget for next week, those are the 2 that we'll go over. I think I am going to put the draft budget on the website too, in case anybody wants to take a peek at it.
Yeah,
God, I would love somebody else to look at those numbers. I've been looking at them for days and days and days.
I think you got this one. Then again, maybe not.
That was the one I did.
Just so you guys know, I don't think I told you this yet, but honey Lauren, she came in, right, Laura, and said she was no longer, she's not
Thinking about
pursuing
the
that
dog
dog.
Oh, she's,
For a
Yeah.
specific reason?
I wasn't here that day. I can't, did it just turn out to be too much? It was a little more
Involved.
Yeah.
liability and, yeah, that sort of thing.
So she had been sort of exploring.
Yeah, I think she
Business
had.
plan
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah,
Huh.
so that's kind of off the
Well,
table right now.
That's,
The impression it would be easier after she's gone to do it and not have to, is where you're taking on the liability.
right.
all right, any
No, I'm
Any
good.
other business?
I think I'm good.
any words of wisdom?
Ah.
All right,
Motion to adjourn.
Where would I stop?
second that?
Second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye.
Do I get a vote?